the link.
Okay, can you share it with them?
So it
Yeah.
looks like a lot of folks actually don't have the calendar invite. So I have actually
Interesting.
shared the Zoom link in the Slack.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Do we want to wait for him? Oh, there he is. Hello.
Yeah. And just I think the number from the phone is Savita.
It is, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. Let's get going. Everybody, welcome to how to review Kubernetes talks for the Maintainer Summit. Important dates coming up. The next wave is supposed to be starting today. The CNCF will send us an email. You'll get more reviews open in Sessionize. Yes, Natalie, with your hand up.
Sorry, I was going to let you finish because I have something to add to this.
Okay. Our reviews are due January 17th. Your reviews are due January 17th. Josh and I have another couple of days to review your reviews and pick from there, but your dates are the 13th, estimated waiting on the CNCF, to the 17th. Natalie?
Yeah, and Lindsay from the LF events team has let us know that if anyone needs to submit a late proposal, I have a link that I'll share in the chat right now, but they are accepting late talks up until 5 p.m. Pacific time today. So for our group, it is very likely we will not receive maybe stuff today Europe time, maybe it'll be tomorrow.
Okay.
And in
Are
the
they
chat
changing
there,
the finish deadline?
oh, sorry, what was that, Josh?
Are they changing the review deadline?
The only message I have in the planners channel is should we have anyone that needs to submit a late proposal, and it's very likely from the folks that we asked for revision of their abstracts, where it's sending it specifically for those folks. So up until 5 p.m. Pacific time today.
Okay, so should Josh and I get with the people we needed work on abstracts?
So the LF team has
already
contacted all those people already.
Perfect.
Yep. But I think they just kept it open a little longer, given that there was only a few days for them to do so.
Okay. Then y'all, same deal as last time. If you can't get to all of the reviews in the compressed timeline, that is okay. Josh and I can handle it. Review what you can. It's not going to be a lot of talks. There is no universe in which it's going to be a lot of talks. Natalie, do you have any idea how many are coming in wave 2?
No, we do actually expect a little bit less than wave 1 for some reason. The 15 or so that was first reviewed, there were definitely a couple of extras that were Kubernetes related, but not Kubernetes track chosen.
Yeah.
So I'd expect around the same, if not a little less.
Okay. So yeah, 15 or less. Don't stress it. If you can't get to them all, Josh and I can handle it. I'm unemployed and have nothing better to do. So I've got the time. But things we're looking for in a talk. These are the criteria that you're going to review against. Is the proposal about Kubernetes project development, like from contributors for contributors or maintainers? Does it have a clear audience who are going to be at the summit? Does the proposal give sufficient detail to know exactly what's being presented or discussed? That means if the abstract is like 2 or 3 sentences, they're very vague, does not include any degree of specific detail, it's probably not great. Try to think, when you're reviewing for that one, try to think of it from the perspective of somebody who's looking at the schedule. Is that enough information to convince an attendee that they would like to see this talk?
Yeah,
Josh?
we also want to get the idea that somebody's going to be prepared to run a session. You know, and having sufficient detail helps with that. A good example of this for those of you who voted in wave 1 was the Minikube talk. Relevant topic, very topical, but they only gave us 2 sentences. And so we pushed that back to wave 2 and said, please give us additional detail.
Yeah, you can always do that in the comments if you think like or if you personally have additional information, like you know this speaker and you know that they're capable of giving this talk, they're just bad at writing an abstract, just put in the comments that like, I personally know that this is potentially a very good talk. This person is well equipped to present this material, but we need more information from the speaker. We need a better abstract. That's a totally valid comment and very helpful because obviously Josh and I don't know everybody in the project. Just most people in the project. Sandeep? You have your hand up?
Yes, so like when I was reviewing the talks during the wave 1, there were 2 proposals that did not have much of an abstract, but
Yep.
they just said that we are going to have a working group meeting. So, like, I was not sure what to do that because the working group meeting sounded very important and collaborative. So I gave both of them a flat rating of 3, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I did the right thing.
We can handle those on a case-by-case basis. And something that the CNCF/the LF didn't warn us about in advance is that things like SIG meetings, those have their own separate room. They do not count against our accepted talks. They exist somewhere else. They're not taking up space on the actual schedule. So those, if you want, you can rate them a flat 3, and Josh and I know what to do with them. But for actual talks that are just really thin on the abstracts, you can leave a review in the comments that there's not enough information in this abstract, and we'll handle it.
Yeah, and I'll say in case, you know, for whichever of you end up in Kat and my position next cycle, primarily what we're looking for those SIG meetings is, are the people proposing them the leader of that team, right? If it's being proposed by like 2 leaders of whatever team it is, then we're probably going to accept it, you know, regardless of what the description is. We might say, hey, you need more of a description to get attendees. But you know, we'll accept it with revision. If it's not being proposed by the team leaders, then we're probably going to need to reach out to the team before accepting it, because that's weird.
Yeah. So I think both of the sessions were proposed by the lead maintainers. So I looked them up and they were the lead maintainers.
That's okay.
And the second thing is that, I think the second thing is that, so what I learned from Josh was kind enough to share one feedback, then the comments are very important. But when it was my first time reviewing, I had like a lot of comments in my personal notepad. But since the session I was showing that comments are optional, I did not give any comments at all.
That's okay. You will. There's a slide about comments later on, but we do want comments. Please leave them, for sure. Mache?
So the one topic that I was struggling a little bit when I was reviewing the first batch was we're primarily focusing on cube sub projects and only that. If I remember correctly, and I'm looking just to double check that I'm not messing up the name, there were 2 proposals about litmus chaos testing, which were not specifically about how
Yeah.
about the development of that
Those-
particular thing, but we're only focusing on Cube and Cube 6 projects
Yeah.
for inclusion in the schedule, not the projects that are, I don't know,
Yeah.
using Cube or not part of the 6 or the main part of the project.
With those 2 talks specifically, those were those were pretty universally panned. Those were recycled main conference track talks, and they were also product pitches for Kubernetes users. So like, yeah, those not appropriate. An actual Kubernetes subproject, fine, sure, go for it. If it's like actually deeply related to Kubernetes and relevant to Kubernetes contributors and maintainers, all good. The Litmus Chaos ones, though, absolutely not.
I mean,
Uh,
this is more about if someone would propose something like Litmus Chaos. I'm not talking about this particular, could be, but something that would be talking about how we could use that for Cube, improving Cube or something like that. That would be
Yeah.
relevant, but
That would be
not
relevant.
about, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like an example of something they could have done if they'd been putting the effort in. If they had a 2-person presentation with one of the Litmus Chaos people and one of the people from Gates Infra, about
Yeah.
their tests using Litmus Chaos to add additional tests to the test grid, then that would have been relevant and something we would have voted on based on quality, right? As opposed to the thing that they did propose, which was clearly just recycled from their main track submission.
Yeah.
Which probably also didn't do well based on the text, but I'm
Probably
not on the
not.
main PC. Aravind?
Yeah, I had a question. Since the Kubernetes 1.32 release just came out, I just wanted to ask if there are some talks which covers the topics or improvements that were covered in the release, should we prioritize or focus on them more?
Not necessarily. That's what the release webinar is for, and that's just happened. So if somebody submits like an interesting talk on the subject of a KEP that is going to make it into 133, because we are starting the 133 release cycle now, that's certainly relevant. However, you have to gamble a little bit, because when you accept that talk, we won't know whether or not that KEP is actually going to make it through code freeze. So for anything relating to 133, be a little bit careful. Go check the release schedule and see like when KubeCon falls versus specific deadlines in the 133 release, because it can be a little bit risky. But like obviously we can pull it and snag something off the wait list at the last minute if we need to, but we'd prefer not to do that. So be careful with 133 talks. For 132 talks, I didn't see any submissions in the last wave that were specific to 132. There was one that was specific to 133. But yeah, don't really weight the release cycle against talk acceptance, I think.
Okay, makes sense. And regarding the topics that were covered in the previous Kubernetes summits, I mean, there's one example that I can give, which is of DRA, dynamic resource allocation, which was that feature was covered in 1.32 as well. And there's a talk on it in Kubernetes Contributor Summit, I think Europe or NA 2024.
Yep.
So if a similar topic comes, which is in the intersection of previous talks and the release, how should we go about it? Do we like not prioritize them more because they have been covered recently? Or
I probably would not prioritize it because it
okay,
was covered at the last summit.
okay,
But
Yeah.
personally, that's my opinion. Josh?
Unless the description makes it clear that this is actually looking at other things, because like DRA is a good example, because well, it's a feature now. It's not like it's done, right? So if somebody's submitting a DRA talk that is specifically about new stuff going into DRA, possibly, say specifically about new stuff going into DRA that affects other SIGs, or requires some kind of hard trade-off in API or something else, then, and this comes down to the point of, is it topical, right? Is this something that it feels like is going to be relevant to discuss in March? And that requires a certain amount of crystal ball gazing, right? Because one of the things that we had discussions on and that we had comments on for a couple of the proposals we had in wave 1 was, hey, won't this be settled like by the end of this month? And therefore it's not going to be very interesting in March. And you have to kind of guess for those things. For things that are open issues now, etc. And sometimes, and again, one of the things that we do with this, because it's extension of the Kubernetes Contributor Summit is we'll often give feedback to the speakers around emphasis, because we had one where they were talking about a feature that went into 1.3.2, but then they were also talking about how that related to a more general framework. And so we supplied them with the feedback of saying, hey, we'd really like this talk to focus on the framework idea because the feature is done. And the people who care about it will certainly already know about it by March. But the framework idea is new and affects more people than the feature does.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You are so welcome. All right, criteria for specific types of proposals. If we get a workshop or a contributor tool, tutorial, how-to type of thing, we need to keep in mind, is it scoped for what people could reasonably do in the time slot allowed, about an hour? And are there instructions on what attendees need to bring or know to participate? If it's just a blanket pitch with no, like, bring your laptop, that's not an immediate no. It's just something that, we need to consider. That is feedback we can give to the speaker for the submitter. We need to adjust this, but keep it in mind. The most important thing here is keeping track of scope. There are some things that are not reasonable to complete in a 1-hour workshop, and some things that would realistically only take like 15 or 20 minutes. So what are they going to do with the rest of that time? It could be scoped too large. It could be scoped too small. Just consider that. I honestly consider that with all talks. I consider that with all talks, but it's considerably more important with things like workshops. We just went through a lot of this in the questions and answers 2 slides ago, but discussions of pending KEPs, issues, features, so situational. So situational. There is a lot to keep track of there. There's already the, is this still going to be relevant in March conversation that we just had? Is there already a KEP or a doc for the proposal that the community can contribute to, or is this just somebody's brainchild? Not necessarily a bad thing if it's just somebody's brainchild. Is this proposal supported or currently under discussion by the relevant owning SIGs? Keep in mind that the summit is not a way to get around the normal KEP process. People still have to go through the normal KEP process. You can't show up at the summit just to try to undercut that, especially if you've opened a KEP and discussion has already determined, no, we're not going to pursue this. Coming to the summit just to whine on stage for 40 minutes, not chill. So do keep an eye out for those. And also the abstract should make it clear what the proposers are actually looking for by speaking at the summit on this KEP, this issue, this feature. They need to have an ask.
And this is where your comments are super duper useful, because Kat and I are not in all SIGs. And in wave 1, we had a couple of people leave comments because they are in the SIGs that were relevant for a particular proposal about the status of that proposal. Because something gets proposed for SIG network, it might look perfectly plausible to me. But for somebody who's involved in SIG network, they might be, oh, yeah, that's not happening. Yeah. In which case we don't necessarily want it on the schedule for March. If somebody can say with reasonable confidence it's going to be rejected before
that. Sub-project and team meetings, again, this needs to be an officially requested meeting. Ideally, from the actual SIG leads. If it is from somebody who, after a quick check of the SIGs, appears to just be a random contributor, it's not an immediate no, but we do have to ask. Natalie?
Yeah, just want to say a big sorry that wasn't communicated to this group before. We only got the separate room for the project meetings confirmed halfway through the program review, the first wave review time. So
not
that
your
was
fault.
also an unknown for us on the other side too. But yeah, it is a smaller room than where the content will be, but still a separate room for project meetings.
So just search for whoever is the person who submitted the request, and if it is just a random contributor, put a note in the comments, and Josh and I will look into it. We'll reach out to SIG leadership. Noah?
So just for future reference, since I am kind of assuming that we're going to have the same similar patterns moving forward, should we be keeping within the CFP any mention of whether or not SIG meetings belong there? Should they still be going through this process and they just get shunted off? Should they be going through a separate process? Do we know?
That's a problem for next year's committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Nat?
I mean, I do know in that we recommended that the program chairs recommended that they submit through this way so that we get the official, we need a project meeting, give us a slot aspect, because outside of the contributors, KCS contributor summit on its own being smaller, and thus that information kind of triage in a different way, this was the only way we could keep track. And we are keeping a lot of retro notes because a lot of this was not ideal. So good questions. But basically, this also helps the event team understand for capacity for next time, because they weren't really, outside of us telling them, yes, we'll need space for project meetings. Again, we just don't know often how many we're going to get. So it's also a bit of a capacity planning thing for them too.
Sessions to avoid. Specifically, recycled KubeCon main track submissions. There have been a lot of these, like a lot of them. Almost certainly an immediate no for me, unless it is somehow relevant to both crowds. Almost certainly an immediate no. Topics aimed at users rather than contributors. Carefully reading the CFP will tell you whether this is aimed at users rather than contributors, but this is the Maintainer Summit. So we are not speaking to regular Kubernetes users, even though many of us are also Kubernetes users at work. That is not what this is for. So make sure it is a contributor-focused talk. Topics related to specific company products. Same rule applies here as applies at KubeCon main track. No pitches. No product pitches. Some companies who shall remain unnamed are very good at submitting thinly veiled product pitches. If one of them sneaks past you, that's okay. They won't sneak past me and Josh because we've been doing it long enough to be quite good at finding the thinly veiled ones. But it will likely happen.
Yeah. And I do want to distinguish between specific company products and the general idea of products, right? Because if somebody were to submit a panel that had somebody from 3 different public clouds
Sure,
about
totally fine.
the future direction of cloud provider plugins.
That's
right?
interesting and relevant.
Yes.
Yeah. But if they're trying to like sell us Kubernetes maintainers and contributors a tool to use either in our day jobs or within the project, no.
Right. Or, if one of my, one of my coworkers submits something about a problem that only OpenShift is having, and that's not in mainline Kubernetes, not relevant.
Yeah.
Even if it is a highly technical problem.
Yeah. Sessions that are actually about a non-Kubernetes CNCF project, if there is truly like no relevance, no connection to Kubernetes itself, those need to get kicked over to another track. There isn't a way within Sessionize to do that. So the answer is you go into our channel on Slack and you tell me and Josh that, and we will handle it. And Natalie will also see it since she's in there now too. So yeah, unfortunately, Sessionize does not let you just move stuff around willy-nilly, wish it did, but it does not. Also, gripe sessions. So if somebody submits something that seems to be just complaining about the project, about their CAP not being accepted, about some SIG, or I don't know, the state of the world. While I love listening to people complain, and I love complaining, it's not appropriate for the Maintainer Summit. And I'm happy to sit down and let these people complain at me at the summit, but most attendees don't want to see that. And it's not helpful. So no gripe sessions on the schedule. Not opposed to having an unofficial ad hoc gripe sesh in person in London, though, if anybody has things they would like to complain about at length.
You have until 5 p.m. PST today, Kat, to submit that session.
Oh no, we've always got unconference.
Yeah. No, the gripe sesh is at the hotel bar, actually. Yeah, that's where we go to complain. Noah?
Actually, that led into my next question, which is how much unconference do we have? Like, is there a whole blocked unconference so that we can say, no, this belongs over here? That's a yes.
So yes, in terms of space, but we're not asking for unconference sessions to be submitted via the CFP.
Perfect.
We can post it, note it like they do at DevOps Days. It's If it works for DevOps Days Chicago and it's like 700 attendees, we can handle it for the Kubernetes track.
Yeah. So for the Contributor Summit previously, we've always created an issue and shared that in the relevant communications channels as it needs to be, and people use that throughout the day. We have a room with the 2 rooms that don't have AV will be for unconference and for the project meetings. And it's about 6.5 hours of time.
Perfect. All right, how to score stuff. So you're evaluating everything against the criteria we just covered. Sessions that are otherwise good with problems, like the abstract is like not fully fleshed out, or there's a language barrier and we need to like clarify some of the language in the abstract, that's totally fixable. Don't knock points off for things like bad English. Like that is something that we can fix later on. 0.5 to 1.0, completely unusable. Do not accept this talk. 4 to 5 is prioritize this high. We really, really, really want this. Things in the middle are things that are well conceived, like really, really well written, but not necessarily topical, or proposals that are topical, but not super well written and need some fixes. So just not perfect. These need work. These are workable into a state that is good on the schedule. Most importantly, please leave comments. We actually need these more than we need your ratings, since we're rating these talks too. Being able to sort them and have ratings from multiple people is very, very helpful for making sure that Josh and I aren't like going off on a limb and misrating things by our own biases. But what we really, really need is an actual explanation of why you rated that thing that way. Because you might have information that we don't, or that other reviewers don't, like that a cap is about to be rejected, or that there is actually some like really wild drama behind the scenes on this one particular topic that this person wants to speak about. Stuff like that. We need that additional context to make sure that the schedule is as good as it can be. LGTM and seems good are not useful comments. So please don't just leave those. That used to be in the how to review talks for KubeCon instructions, but is no longer there, which is endlessly frustrating. So please do not just leave LGTM or seems good. Justify your rating with words. 2 or 3 sentences will do.
Yeah. One thing to think about is if you don't have any particular knowledge of the topic or the session leader, right? Just leave a comment based on why you would attend the session or why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? Depending on how you're rating it. Or both in some cases. Like if you're rating it a 3, you might have both of those things, right? Here's why I would go to this. Here's why I wouldn't go to this. Because you are a Kubernetes contributor, and therefore, your viewpoint as audience is one of the things that we want to see.
Yeah. All right. Any questions? That's all the guidance we have on how to review these things. Or any hot gossip.
Well, if we get into hot gossip, I should stop recording.
Well, before that, then, I want to, as a program chair, if anyone has questions for me about overall Maintainer Summit stuff, I'm happy to answer that too.
Okay. Arvind?
Arvind?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, since I'm like considerably new to this field, and I don't have much context as much as you do, although I do have some like working knowledge of Kubernetes concepts, and I know the topics that are being talked about in the talk itself, but like not much context about conferences in general, uh, or how they are being conducted and all. So is there something I should focus on when leaving comments, or like just how should I go about this process?
With the comments specifically, thinking from the perspective of an attendee has historically been very helpful for me when trying to figure out how to write helpful feedback. So like, would this be enough information for you to attend the talk if you were attending this just as a person uninvolved with running the thing? What questions do you have about the abstracts? Like when you read that abstract, does it make you go, why would I care about this? Or what point is this speaker trying to get to? Like that's useful feedback. So think about what questions it makes you ask and whether or not you would actually attend that talk yourself. Nat, I see you came off mute.
Oh no, I just did in case I had to answer a question. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Okay.
if you're unsure how to write a useful comment, like literally anything more involved than LGTM seems good or no, this sucks is helpful. So like you don't have to write us a thesis, you don't have to write us a whole paragraph, a couple of sentences justifying like how you felt is enough. That's still helpful.
Yeah, makes sense. I just meant to
Yeah,
say I won't have much hard gossip about the topic since I don't have much more context. But yeah.
And that's actually useful for us to know, right? Because you may go through and you may rate something a 3.0 and say, hey, I didn't really understand what this proposal was about. It looks
That's
competent,
useful.
but I'm giving it a mid rating for that reason.
Yeah, I don't understand.
And then it's useful for us to know because it's different from you giving it a 3.0 because you feel like it's a good topic with problems. You follow me?
Yeah, if the abstract straight up doesn't make sense, and we do get abstracts sometimes that straight up don't make sense, it is likely not because you are inexperienced or lacking context. It could very much be that it's a poorly conceived proposal that genuinely is messy, that doesn't make sense. So like hearing this doesn't make sense from the perspective of somebody who's relatively new, that is a valuable piece of feedback.
Got it. That is helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes. Just one quick question. How do we find out if the talk is a previously recycled KubeCon talk?
That's kind of a vibes thing. So the way you write a KubeCon proposal is very different from the way you write a maintainer track proposal or a maintainer summit proposal. If it reads like it is talking to users, often they will straight up say users in the talk. That is a recycled KubeCon talk, and it shouldn't be accepted. It needs to read like it's speaking to other maintainers, other contributors to Kubernetes, not to Kubernetes users.
Sometimes also just Googling the name of the talk.
Yeah.
Some people will just resubmit talks that have already been given as well, that are still not acceptable for that audience. So it's worthwhile sometimes Googling if you, like Kat mentioned, feel the vibe of this may not be a fit.
And also, summit talks are supposed to be collaborative. So, and this would go whether or not it was recycled, right? Is if they submit something that, you know, by the language and everything is clearly a presentation where they do not expect any involvement from the audience, that's a lot less appropriate for the summit, right? Because the idea of the summit is people are coming there to have discussions, to get feedback, to make sure that people are clear on changes going on with the project. The presentations are supposed to be interactive, and not just somebody talks on the stage for half an hour and then it ends.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, Josh, you want to kill the recorded part of this and we'll see if there's any.
There we go.